Welcome to Deep Waters here on ProBox TV, where we talk all things boxing today. It's the red-hot 154-pound division. It isn't just a truck stop between welterweight and middleweight anymore. It is absolutely on fire. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about some undefeated fighters, some fighters trained out of California that have been absolutely incredible. And I have the experts right now to help me break it all down. That's right. Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi, and of course, Teddy Atlas, trainer extraordinaire. Let's start with, of course, the undefeated Russian. Of course, our champs. They know a lot more about it than I do. They know about hand speed. They know about accuracy. We have that in spades at 154. But let's take a look at it here. Of course, Sebastian Fundora, Bakram Murtazaliev, trust me, I worked on that name, Israel Madrimov, and Sebastian Fundora, of course, the guy right now to have two titles at 154 pounds with the upset over Tim Tszyu. When you look at this talent, let me go to the panel right now. Of course, we start with you, Paulie Malignaggi. When you look at this Murderers Row at 154, not just a great group of guys, but new names in exciting division. How important is that for the sport?
Yeah, I think it's important that a weight class keeps moving and the top guys fight each other. These guys are all young and hungry, relatively new champions, so that I think they're willing to fight one another, and they're going to be willing to take on the best contenders so that they can make a big name for themselves. You know, sometimes you get guys who kind of come with a big promotional push behind them, but I don't feel like a lot of these guys that are the champions right now in this weight class have come with this huge push that say, you know, we did hear about them before they had belts, of course, but it wasn't like they weren't being touted as the next stars or the guys that were going to carry the division. You know, they were just known as solid championship level or possible championship level fighters. And I think the fact that they all now have belts, I feel like there's a possibility that, you know, we could get these matchups, obviously promotional entities being aboard for this. We have an opportunity here where I think guys will be hungry enough to fight one another and to fight the top guys. I tell you what, though, it'll be a very difficult weight class to unify because everybody's hungry and everybody's good and everybody's aggressively good too. You know, these guys make some pretty good fights.
Yeah, but Chris, a radically different group of guys, right? You talk about Fundora, 6'5.5". The other two champs, very, very durable, very, very tough, maybe a bit more seasoned. Who do you see in this division having staying power?
You know, I think we have a lot to see with these guys, and I think 154 junior middleweight or super welterweight, depending on how you look at it. It's been one of those divisions. It's kind of been wedged in between the two glamour divisions of welterweight and middleweight. But middleweight currently is pretty much a desert. And welterweight is in a bit of a transition. We got a lot of guys moving in and out of the weight class. 154 is actually looking really hot. And Paulie, to your point about it's going to be tough to unify. Yeah, it's going to be tough to unify for any one of those particular guys. But I think in terms of making the fight happen, it's actually going to be a little bit easier because we don't have big name guys. You know, oftentimes when you have these hungry guys that aren't really that well known, they're willing to fight anybody. And a lot of times they're coming from promoters that are a little bit smaller, that are working with bigger promotions. So they're going to be able to make those deals happen. So these fights can actually occur. But in terms of, you know, staying power, I think we have a lot more to see from all of them. Fundora, obviously, he's kind of the glamour guy right now because of his fantastic and emphatic win over Tim Tszyu a couple weekends ago. But he's going to be out for a bit. So we're not going to see him till September, November. So we're looking at the end of the year, and he's got two of those belts. So unless he gets stripped, he's going to be having those belts for at least till the end of this year. Madrimov, who I've actually called a few times on some undercards on Matchroom, he's a very, very talented fighter. He's been in very, very tough from the start. There's some talks of him having a really big fight soon with some big names. I'm not sure if I can even say it right now, from if it's true or not. And then we've got this new guy on the block, Bakram, who he beat Jack Kolke. And Jack Kolke might not be known that well over here. German fighter, very, very tough out, man. Demetrius Andrade went over there and fought a very close fight with him. Very, very talented guy. Gave everybody hell, and Bakram was able to stop him. So that I think even Kolke in being in an advanced age, he's 38 years old. I think that's a very impressive win. I need to see more of him and see how he matches up with the rest of these guys. But in terms of star power, Listen, I mean, Fundora has been a guy that we've been looking to be a star for a while now. You know, he's like you said, he's 6'5.5", 80-inch reach. He's a really likable guy, and obviously he's got the medal. He showed that in the Tim Tszyu fight. But can he hold on to those titles? That's really the question. And I think it really depends on who these guys meet up with, because there's a ton of super talented names just below the championship. Just below the champion. They're not below the championship level. They've all been champions. You've got Errol Spence. You got Terence Crawford, who's talking about moving back down or moving up to 54 to fight one of these guys. He has a mandatory position. You've got Errol Spence, who's back in the mix now. You've got you got the Charlo, who may not come back down to 154. He may. I don't think he will. But still, there's a lot of names that can match up with these lesser known guys who are still very tough. So I think we have a lot of excellent fights on the horizon. And listen, I mean, it's going to be tough for any single person to unify, but I think we're going to see unification pretty soon compared to other weight classes.
Fundora, Madrivov, Murtazaliev, Teddy Atlas, of these three guys, whose rise has been most impressive to you?
Well, I mean, obviously, the Russian and the fighter from Uzbekistan. You love the way I'm cheating here without pronouncing their names. I've been around a while. I've been around the block a while. I learned a couple things, how to cheat that way. But Mutsavliev, and we'll leave it at that, and Madrimov, they obviously there's less known about them, as both the former champions both said very well. There's less known. They're new on the block as far as extensive amateur careers, the typical when you come from those countries where you have probably 200, 300 amateur fights. So they know how to fight. Like Customato used to say, after that many fights, if you don't know how to fight, you better go sell Italian ices on a freaking neighborhood block somewhere. So even though they are not household names, the people in the industry knew them. They've been around a long time. They've been seasoned in the amateur ranks. They are new on the block as far as the names. They're going to have to, just proof of it is I have trouble pronouncing their names. That tells you right there that it's going to take a little while for people to catch on. But I think Chris really touched on the most important part is that, you're always looking for star power, and the guys that are going to crash the party or can crash the party is Crawford and Spence. And if they crash the party, instantly you have recognition. You have some of that stardust that is sprinkled over the division, which obviously makes it that much more attractive to the public. Fundora, he's a guy that, look, I'm taking nothing away, magnificent win, but an asterisk. An asterisk. I mean, they put asterisk next to the baseball players sometimes for different reasons. Maybe we put an asterisk there. And again, I know the fans are going to come down on me and say, hey, Teddy, you hate. I'm not hating. I love the guy. Guy 6'7" at that weight. Comes off a devastating knockout, shows the character to come back. But if it's not for that just, incredible cut and the streaming of blood all night long that Tszyu had to deal with, I'm not so sure that he's there. I think it definitely impacted the outcome of that fight. So there's still questions on Fundora. He's still one fight removed from being knocked out cold. Yes, he did show that he learned how to fight taller in this fight against Tszyu. He definitely showed improvement in those areas. Can he continue to do that? And the other thing is Spence. Who is he? What's my line? Is he still Spence? This really is an interesting class. If he comes back there and he fights Fundora or whoever he plugs in there with, they're looking probably, PBC is probably looking to make that fight. But who is Spence at this point in his career after that devastating, where he was taken apart piece by piece by the great Crawford? So there's a lot of, and Tszyu, he loses because of the blood, you could say, the cut, he loses in that kind of a fashion. He's right back in there. He deserves another chance to to kind of right the ship, if you will. So
Well,
very
that's exactly
interesting.
what we're talking about, Teddy, is the challengers with the big names. How do they do? All of our experts have talked about it. It's about the challengers who can knock off the champ at 154. We discuss that when we come back.
Wednesday Night Fights. On the next Wednesday Night Fights, April 10th, don't miss the main event. Angelo Leo returns to ProBox to take on Eduardo Baez of Mexico. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at ProBoxTV.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
It is going to be a great one. Baez versus Leo. I will be ringside alongside Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri. They join me in studio today alongside Teddy Atlas. We're discussing the 154-pound division. Gentlemen, in boxing, as in life, stardom has its privileges. The thing right now, the challengers are really the stars at 154 pounds. To name a few, you have Terence Crawford. Of course, we all know him, pound for pound, probably the best in the world. Jamel Charlo, former champion. Tim Tszyu, Errol Spence Jr., Danny Garcia waiting in the wings. Let's start with you, Chris. If I give you $1,000, which of these fighters are you betting on to be champ at 154 by the end of the year?
Terence Crawford. I think that's the move. I've been saying that for a while. I think that he had his eyes really locked in on that Tim Tszyu Fundora fight. He went out in public and said that he was going to enact his mandatory position for the WBO. That's still there. The problem is that the fact that Tim Tszyu lost, Fundora won, but Fundora got injured. So now we got time in between. But there's also other guys for him to fight. And I think with you mentioned star power, and there's no higher star, brighter star in the world of boxing today, in these divisions than Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, I think, has earned the right to be able to step in to fight these guys. He's an undefeated champion at the weight class below. He's going to be moving up. In the WBO, that means that you can challenge for the world title as soon as you move up. That's not the same in all the other weight class and all the other governing bodies, but I think that if you start dangling a Terence Crawford matchup with a lot of these other champions, they're because it's the most money available. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to fight someone like Terence Crawford. So if Madrimov gets that chance, listen, is he going to say no? Is he going to look to fight his mandatory instead for 1/10 of the money? Probably not. So, but I believe that Terence Crawford is going to move up, take one-on-one. Is really gonna be able to defeat Terence Crawford the way that he's been looking lately, especially the way that he looked against Errol Spence in his last fight. Even though we're coming up on a year's time since that fight happened, but yeah, if I had to put my money on it, I would see Terence Crawford being the next one or someone to hold the title by the end of this year.
Paulie, it was Errol Spence Jr., however, in the ring after the Fundora Tszyu fight. Who has the inside track to you with these names?
I mean, here's the thing. Crawford is not a PBC fighter, so they'll, I think PBC will try to avoid making him and Fundora if they can help it, because they'd like to keep the belts inside the stable. It just depends on how much the WBO will enforce that mandatory. I'll put it to you like this. I don't know how much Spence has left, but I do think that if Spence fights Fundora, he's got a good shot of beating him. The guys that probably deserve the shot at Fundora, take your pick, are Tszyu, Crawford, and Spence. I mean, you're talking about those three, and I really rate Fundora. I think he's a pretty good fighter. Just this is not an easy weight class, and being a world champion is not easy. I can't see Fundora beating any of those three, unless Spence is totally shot. I don't see Fundora beating any of those three. I'd like to see Tszyu get a meritorious rematch, but I understand there could be more money for the Crawford fight, or there could be more money even in the Spence fight. If PBC wants to make that happen, they will make sure that enough money gets put up there to make that happen, because that's how Al Heyman operates. Whatever he wants to happen, he will make sure there's enough money there to make it happen. I don't know, man. And Teddy, I'm gonna rescue you from some of the bashing brigade when you mentioned the blood on Fundora. People are going to come at you and say, the idiots are going to come at you and say, oh, well, Tszyu was, the blood on Tszyu. And people are going to say, well, the idiots are going to say, well, Fundora was bleeding too. Well, Fundora was bleeding as he got punched in his mouth and his nose. Bleeding from your elbow is one thing, and bleeding from getting punched in the face in a boxing match is something else. You're supposed to be bleeding because you're not defending those shots. While you're not supposed to be bleeding from an elbow in a boxing match. So I just wanted to get you back on that, Teddy, because you gotta stay ahead of the idiots. They're not really that bright. So you gotta
I love you guys.
make them
I
understand.
love you guys because your fight is all the way to the core, fighting for your friends, loyalty.
We got your back, Teddy. We got your back.
Because you gotta lay it all on the line as far as the way it goes. But either way, Jimmy, going back to you, yeah, Spencer's in the ring. I could see PBC making a push for it. Like I said, I've already spoken that I feel like Zoo deserves a rematch. But in a business, in a sport that is more business than sport, we really don't know what will happen.
Now, Teddy, my question for you, are we disrespecting these champions? We know about the Stars. Do you think they hold on to the belt, or do they drop it in their first defense? What are your thoughts on it?
No, I mean, these are both of them are two solid guys. I just said it before. They have the pedigree in the amateurs. They know how to fight. They're both physical guys, strong guys. I love the way that Matra Saliev wears you down. I mean, he really breaks you down. He wears you out. And he's not what I would call an explosive puncher. He's a ponderous puncher, where he breaks you down. But he's also got good reach, and he can fight on the outside. He can use a jab. He can fight on the outside. He can get things done he's a solid guy. And the same thing for Maklimov. And both the champions said earlier, one of the keys is they're TV friendly. These are guys that you don't mind watching because they're right in front of you. They're coming to get you. The fighter from Uzbekistan, Matramov, that guy's a relentless guy, but he's controlled. He's not sloppy. He takes his time. He goes to the body, but he's like the ocean. It keeps coming. You move that sandcastle back, it don't matter. The tide's gonna get to you. It's gonna get to you, and that's him. And that's the kind of guy I like to watch. That's the kind of guy that I think we all like. So no, I get what you're saying, Jim, and you're saying the right thing. You're asking the right question, because we are forgetting all about them in that kind of way. They don't, they don't have the star power yet. They're not known yet. They're not the known commodity yet. But they are solid guys. They will take care of themselves. Nobody can overlook those guys. But yeah, it's the rite of passage in the business of boxing. You have to get known first. Like Ennis, right? Ennis is a tremendous fighter at welterweight. But Crawford said it right. You got to earn your way up to fight me. You haven't done it yet. You got to build yourself up enough where you're enough of a name recognition where I can get paid.
What I love about you, Teddy, is you make my transition so easy, because we're going to take a break and talk about exactly that. The injury to Fundora may make the fight that Crawford was talking about with Ennis. Will it be reality? We'll find out after the break.
Wednesday Night Fights. On the next Wednesday Night Fights, April 10th, don't miss the main event. Angelo Leo returns to ProBox to take on Eduardo Baez of Mexico. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at ProBoxTV.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
Get ready, because there's going to be some savage body punching going on. That's right, at Wednesday Night Fights, ProBox TV. It's going to be a great one. We'll be ringside. We hope to see you there. Now, as we continue on Deep Waters, we're discussing the 154-pound division. Sebastian Fundora did not leave his fight with Tim Tszyu unscathed. A broken nose giving him a medical suspension. Paulie, a lot of people don't understand. Medical suspensions are till you can prove there isn't a problem anymore. As you know, a broken nose can really last. Does Terence Crawford have to go somewhere else? Maybe the Boots Ennis fight, a fight a lot of people are looking forward to. Is that where Crawford goes?
I don't think so. I think him and Asima both said that Boots Ennis wasn't really on their radar. it wasn't the ilk of the kind of fight that they're looking for. You know, they're looking for big money. Let's be honest. I mean, we're at the stage now of Terence Crawford's career where he's done it all. This is the twilight of his career. He's looking to maximize his earnings, maximize his legendary status. I think moving up in weight into a fourth weight class, getting another world title there, and looking for bigger money fights is probably on his radar. With Boots Ennis, you got a young guy. Obviously, he's very deserving at 147. But like I said, they've already said they weren't really that interested in that. They were looking for the Canelo Alvarez fight. They threw their hat in the mix for Tim Tszyu. At this point, it seems to me that Terence Crawford is making money moves, and I'm not sure that the Jaron Ennis fight makes the kind of money that is going to entice him to stay at 147 when he has so many other opportunities in higher weight classes.
Paulie, what's your thought on it? A move to 154, assuming Fundora is out for a while, and as we know, broken noses are really, really tricky. What do you think Terence Crawford's best options are if he's looking for money, the way Chris says?
I mean, there's been discussions of him fighting Chris Eubank, possibly in England, and a win over Eubank, if he would be able to pull that off against a middleweight, would at least make the conversation more viable for him and Canelo. I mean, I could see that maybe that would be something. Of course, going up to 160 now, you're dealing with natural size and all the other stuff. But Eubank is an X154, so he's not the biggest middleweight. Having said that, Crawford still started at lightweight, but it's still one of those challenges where you could, see people sort of, following that along and seeing if Crawford can pull that off, because Crawford really has been so dominant no matter what weight class he's fought. He's barely been competitive with anybody. He's just been anybody's barely been competitive with him, should I say. And so, that would be the only reason why even a Eubank fight would probably be something that I think people would be interested in. And I think that especially in England, where there's such an amazing boxing crowd, I think, Eubank sells well over there. McIntyre, Bo Mack used to was training Eubank his last fight. Obviously, he's training Crawford his whole career. There's a lot of storylines for that fight, too. I could see something like that being made. I agree with the champ, Chris. Ennis is not a big enough name for Crawford to take on at this point. I think Ennis has been totally mismanaged, mispromoted. I mean, I think it's almost criminal with the way he's been treated in boxing. But that's what happens when you have a weight class where the top guys aren't fighting, and Crawford and Spence weren't fighting for such a long time that it jammed up the whole weight class. And it's the same thing that's happening at 168 with Canelo not fighting Benavidez. Where anytime you have a weight class that moves and filters, you have more fun fights. And that's why I think people get excited about 154 pounds, because there's a lot of new names and there's a lot of new faces who really are very good fighters, but then there's a little bit of star power in there where you have Spence, Crawford, and even Tim Tszyu, who his name is starting to come up into the more star power as well. So you have a very competitive weight class where I think fights can happen.
Now, Teddy Atlas, I have to ask you, with the trainer's mind, you trained Michael Moore, Mike Tyson. People forget these were small heavyweights taking on much bigger guys. Does Terence Crawford have to make a lot of tactical changes to take on guys up to middleweight? What do you think about his skill set in that regard?
I think he wins with everybody, and I agree with the two champions. I think he wins right now with the guys that are there. He carries his power well. He's moved up 3 weight classes. This will be the 4th weight class. He's carried his power with him. Punches are born, they're not made. You have power, you carry what? Pacquiao, we forget about a guy like that. He used to be a jockey riding horses, and the next thing you know, he goes bantamweight, he goes lightweight, he goes welterweight, he goes junior. I mean, he just kept going up. And what did he do? He carried his power, and he carried his speed, obviously, as the smaller man. Crawford carries his speed, he carries his power, and the most important thing is what's inside of Crawford. He's a special guy. He doesn't believe you can beat him. It's hard to beat a guy who doesn't believe you can beat him. And his timing is at a different level, just a whole different, dimension than anybody else. He sees things that other people don't see. So it's not just that he's quick and he's faster, but his timing is better because he's so calm that he sees something and he's just going to catch you. Just a twitch of your muscle, whatever it is, where you're just starting to see that. And that's why he's always ahead of you. I think the only thing that, look, Paulie brought it up. There's a couple things that obviously can defeat somebody as special as Crawford. You can move up too many weight classes. I don't think that's the case. He's got the skeleton. He's got the size. He fits in good. He's a wiry guy. And these guys aren't, these are good, solid fighters, but then there's no Godzilla there. So I think that Crawford can move up. He can win there. But there's the thing I'd be worried about is the one enemy that's undefeated against everybody, no matter who they are, and that's Father Time. That's the thing that could finally catch up to him. You know, he's not that young. He's getting a little bit older now. Although he hasn't been abused, he hasn't been used up, anything like that. But he's the guy that you got to knock off. He's the creme de la creme. He's the top guy right there now. And
well, as I said, one thing you're great at doing is talking about exactly what we need to talk about, which is the creme de la creme as far as star power goes. That is Canelo Alvarez. Can't finish show without talking about him and his next fight and Teddy Atlas's opinion about trainers right after this. Welcome back to Deep Waters. Don't forget, Wednesday night fights, ProBox TV. It is going to be a banger. A lot of body shots, a lot of phone booth fights. We're going to be there. You have to check it out. It's going to be all action. And speaking of all action, when you talk about all action, you talk about stardom. Of course, you have to talk about Canelo Alvarez. Now, we got the opinions of Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi about the trainers, Freddie Roach, Eddy Reynoso, but trainer himself, Teddy Atlas. I got to get your opinion. Is this fight won in the corner, adjustments by veteran trainers? Is that a key in this fight?
There's always a key in a fight, you know, if it's a competitive fight. Obviously, it you got to have the horse in the race. You know, you can't ride him to the finish line if if you're riding on a pony and everyone else is riding, on a thoroughbred horse. The talent does matter. Obviously, the class does matter. In this case, I think that you have to look at it where the edge between Munguia and Canelo with the trainers. First of all, Eddie's been with Canelo a lot longer than Freddie has been with Munguia. So I think you got to start there. He's had a lot more time. I think Munguia is still a work in progress. I think that he's improving. I see improvement in him. He's putting punches together better. He's got to get better defensively. That's the key. He's got to move his head after he punches. He's got to be able to become harder. He's got a granite-looking chin so far, but we all know about that. Nobody knows better than the champions right there that sooner or later that granite chin gets cracked if you allow it to keep getting hit over and over and over again. So at the end of the day, Munguia is still, he's still behind the 8 ball. He's still progressing. He's still improving. Canelo, of course, the question is he slipping? He's probably gotten to the pinnacle of his career now, where he's the best he's going to be. Is he going to start to slip backwards a little bit? I think at the end of the day, it's always important to be able to make adjustments, but the key is to make those adjustments. I won't even call them adjustments, to make those changes in the gym. That's the thing. I mean, you can make adjustments in the corner, but if you haven't taught the core things, the most important things, the things that could be detrimental to your fighter, defense for Munguia, if that hasn't been improved on, if that hasn't been set in stone in the gym, you know what? You ain't making no adjustment. What are you going to say? Move your head? You should have said that already. What are you going to say? Slip the right hand? That had to be taught. If that hadn't been taught already, then it's too late. So the most important thing here is probably experience, where Eddie's got, he's got the guy with the experience. He's been with him. I give him a lot of credit. I thought the difference, and this is probably going to shake up some of the wacky fans out there, but I love Triple G. But one of the things that I thought really, and I thought he got robbed in his first 2 fights. The last one didn't matter. He was 100 years old. But in his first 2 fights against Canelo, he got robbed. I don't care what you say. The second one was a little different, more of a jabbing contest. He won with the jab. First one, he won the fight walking forward. But one thing that Reynoso did was he helped improve Canelo. I saw more of an improvement in Canelo as he was moving forward than I did in Triple G. Yeah, Triple G, one of the great middleweights, but he never changed. He beat guys, he was bigger than him. He beat a lot of junior middleweights. Again, not taking anything away from him. He was great. And he beat a lot of guys from across the pond. I might as well get the English fans going crazy too, as well as the Mexicans and as well as everybody else that got freaking going after me. But why leave anybody out? But he improved. Canelo continued to get better, where Triple G depended on his power, he depended on his chin, he depended on his aggression. He was a silver medalist in the Olympics. He had 300 amateur fights. He had that pedigree behind him, but I never saw him improve with his trainer. I saw Canelo improve with his trainer. And again, I see Freddie improving Munguia. I just have to give the edge right now. If we're going to make it a contest, I have to give the edge to Reynoso because he's been there longer with his fighter, and his fighter is more experienced, and he's further along in the areas that you have to improve.
You heard it. Teddy Atlas is making his pick. That's what we stick with, and it's all about who you have in your corner. I had Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri, and the champ maker, Teddy Atlas, in my corner. I'm Jimmy Smith. Thank you so much for checking out Deep Waters. We'll see you next time.